school buses and operating the school buses. We've got Sue Gander from World Resources Institute, and then Amy McGuire from Highland Fleets, which is looking at actually providing some of those services and supporting the grid in the way that I was just describing. So we can probably dive right in. As usual, some announcements. And as usual, we're going to host this meeting in the typical way where we'll have all three speakers give their presentations, and then we will pause for Q&A after that. So we have all three speakers come back on camera at the end of all of the presentations, and then we ask all three speakers questions simultaneously. So we won't pause it for Q&A after each one. We'll just do one big Q&A at the end. And then we'll go into our member discussion for the final 25 minutes of the meeting, which is a closed discussion to then talk about everything that we heard today and any other pressing electric vehicle issues that any of our states are seeing. Just a quick scheduling note here as well that's on the screen. We have 2 more EV state working group meetings for the rest of the year. One on, and they're slightly off schedule just because of the NARUC annual meeting and yeah, I think that was and in the holidays. So the November 18th is the next one where we're going to be talking about utility ownership of EVSE, and then the December 16th will be the final one for the year on proactive infrastructure investments and planning. So if there's anything that any of you would like to see as part of those meetings, or anything that you'd like to see expanded upon on those topics, please always reach out with ideas or suggestions, either for speakers or for topics or questions, specific questions that you would like to have answered on part of those meetings. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So some upcoming events. We have the NARUC Annual Meeting and Education Conference, which is in Seattle, November 9th through 12th. Seattle, Washington, the home of our vice chair of the EV State Working Group, Milt Dumit. That I'm excited to, I'll be there. Hopefully I'll see many of you there as well. Then there's the Nazio-Ashta Western EV Charging Infrastructure Regional Meeting, which will be held in Salt Lake City on November 13th to 14th. And then the Nazio-Ashta Eastern U.S. EV Charging Infrastructure Regional Meeting on December 9th through 10th in Washington, D.C. And Danielle has a very nice note there at the bottom, too, that if travel costs are a barrier, you can reach out to her to discuss a possible NARUC travel stipend for commissioners and commission staff, presumably. That's right, Danielle? Okay, fantastic. Cool. I think we can go right in. We're going to start actually with Sue Gander from World Resources Institute to set the stage for us a bit more higher level on what she is seeing with electric school buses. So Sue, I will pass it over to you for your 10-12 minute presentation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Paratic, and thank you, Danielle, and others from NARUC. It's great to be back with you and having a chance to talk a little bit about electric school buses. I'm Sue Gander. I'm with the World Resources Institute, and we spend a lot of time thinking about electric school buses. And you've got a great lineup here. Myself, I'll put myself off to the side, but with Kevin and Amy, I'm looking forward to hearing their updates as well. I'm going to ask if you could go ahead and run the slides for me. I apologize. My computer decided that now was the moment that it needed to restart, and it needs to take at least 10 minutes, 20 minutes to do that. So I will jump in. And what I'm going to be doing is kind of setting the stage, as Commissioner Paratic said, to where, a little bit on the why ESBs. I hope that has been answered. I hope you are with us and with families and utilities and others across the country saying, it's not why, but when and how quickly can we move. But a little bit on that, and then where are we? And then I had some ideas to leave you with around the really important role that you all as utility regulatory officials can play in this really important transition that we're undergoing. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and start the slides. I'm not looking at the right screen, so I can see what's up.
I believe
there we go. Okay. So WRI, large global research organization working across the globe. We have this very special project on school bus electrification where we're aiming to electrify the entire school bus fleet. That involves building unstoppable momentum to electrify what is around 500,000 school buses, the largest form of public transportation in the country. We do that importantly through partnerships with state and local officials like all of you, with utilities, with companies, with operators such as Highland and First Student, state policymakers, manufacturers. It really is an ecosystem that is driving this forward. And top of mind for us is how we ensure that this is done in an equitable way, so that we are focusing on underserved communities who bear the brunt of air pollution and other health issues associated with our current fleet of school buses. So very squarely focused on this. I'll start usually where we end, which is just to remind folks that we have a wealth of resources that I hope, if you haven't heard of them, you will take advantage of them. Every guidebook and fact sheet and database that you could possibly think of, over 100. We've tried to think of it. If you think of something that we haven't, please let us know. And that's on our website, which is electricschoolbusinitiative.org. But just a sampling there. The next slide is one that I'll give a little special shout out to, which is our database that we did of all the US school bus depots. And I flagged that because I think something was referenced earlier about this shift between thinking about EVs as a strain to being an asset. And that's absolutely how we think about it. And one of that aspects of that relates to where is the charging happening, and it's happening generally, not always, but at school bus depots. So where are those school bus depots? Well, we set out to find that out, and actually through the use of some fabulous AI for good, we've mapped that out, and we've actually shared this information with EPRI for part of their EV grid to scale and their mapping of the broader development of transportation and fleet electrification. So just something that might be of interest to all of you. All right, sorry. Next slide, if you would. So the why, I, again, don't think this should be too hard of a sell, but there are 20 million children that rely on a school bus to get them to school every day. And those are amazing drivers, amazing transportation directors making this happen, amazing companies like the ones you're going to hear from. It is the largest fleet of, the largest form of public transportation, as I said. And it's really about providing a ride that is healthier, that is quieter, that's better for our community, and also has an ability to provide resiliency benefits to the grid or to buildings or other loads. And so that's a really exciting piece of this that you're going to hear a bit more from the other players. ESBs also create jobs and growth. ESBs are the large manufacturer are based here in the United States. Not always household names, but affiliates of Daimler, of Navistar, VW company, and others. And those manufacturers and some of the suppliers are really critical to job growth. And it's really exciting to see the expansion of electrification within those companies, bringing jobs to people across the country. But We have some challenges, of course, otherwise we'd be here, or we wouldn't be here. We'd just be, moving on to the next challenge. There is a high upfront cost to electric school buses, higher than diesel, which is the predominant fuel choice. And we'll speak a bit about addressing those. Certainly, infrastructure development, always a concern. There are absolutely solutions to help move us beyond those as well. There is a bit of a learning curve. It's a new thing. We need to help guide people along. Also need to help do some myth busting. A lot of education, still needed. And maybe it feels like we've been doing education on this for years and years, and we have, but more to be done. And that's a great, opportunity to partner on that. And back to the resources, we try to write things in sort of plain speak so that people can use it with all sorts of audiences as well. And, that being said, the challenges we face in terms of sustainability prompt us to say we need to do this as quickly as possible. And so there's a desire to scale. And again, thinking about the role of utilities, they play a really important role in scaling because each utility will span multiple school districts. And so when a V2G program gets put in place, or a make ready program, or a special ESB rate, that can touch many different school districts at once. And so that's one aspect of scaling. This is a little bit of a complicated graph. I think we'll be leaving these slides with y'all if you need them later, or we can get them to you or find them on our website. But it just shows the differential between electric school buses and diesel, and how there is this, at the moment, still higher total cost of ownership over the lifetime of a bus, even though once you get a bus, you'll expect to see savings of around $100,000 over the lifetime. So pretty significant per bus. But it's still important to have some of that boost up front to cover that incremental gap. And so that's something that we work on actively. And that's why incentives at this stage in the market development are so critical. So where are we? Current status, we have the nearly 500,000 buses in the United States on the road, and I'll speak to different phases of this, but on the road, about 1%, but growing and significantly higher than we were just a couple years ago. We now have at least one electric school bus in all 49 states, as well as DC and several territories and several tribal nations as well. And importantly, we have upwards of $8 billion in funding. I'll speak to that a little more detail for the moment. Sorry, just to say that there is $5.5 billion in two large programs being run by the EPA, the Clean School Bus Program being the larger of the two, but both that and the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program are moving forward. I'll say specifically what I mean by that, which is $3 billion of the $5 billion in the Clean School Bus Program was awarded, and school districts are drawing down that money, as we speak, and that's getting buses on the road. There's another $2 billion that is still available that has not been struck, and we're eagerly anticipating the release of that additional funding, in the coming months. I can't say when. I can't say for sure because I don't direct that, but we're really, eagerly awaiting some movement on that. And then there's the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Program, which the unspent funds were no longer available, but the grants that were already made under that are moving forward as well. So bigger picture, upwards of 13,000 buses committed, which means there have been some sort of award, or it's actually all the way on the road today. And that's across 1,500 districts. A significant portion of those are in those areas with low income households, which speaks to our equity objectives. And you'll see there the numbers in terms of broad coverage. And it's also, urban, suburban, rural, all sorts of geographies, proving that they can work and meet the needs of school districts everywhere, basically. So our next one delves a little bit more, kind of meant to segue a bit into what the following two speakers will speak to. This is a map that shows our research into where make-ready programs are active across many states here that would apply to electric school buses. So we're grateful for that great progress. That's been really significant and helpful to get things moving, and want to fill in that map to have it be nationwide. So just real briefly, in terms of some ideas that we have and others as well about how PUCs can help. Advancing for utilities, fleet advisory services, and encouraging make-ready programs, supporting proactive planning so that we can think more down the road about where, in this instance, fleet electrification is going, and plan towards that in more deliberate space. And there's some great dockets that are open on this now. Advancing infrastructure solutions such as flexible connection, where there's more of a contractual relationship between the user, the electric school bus user, and a utility, so that there's ability to move more quickly on and modulate their demand, so that there's an easier pathway and a faster pathway to connection. So addressing some of those time lags that are a concern. And then last but not least, managed charging, so critical. Like my two favorite words, managed charging, I guess of any of the words on the slide, just hugely underutilized. We have the technology, it's proven, it really can save money and help with grid congestion, and so just support and thinking about that, and then also the V2X opportunities that unlocks are really critical. The main point being here that we have these tools, they're tried and true, they're being tested, and they're ready for deployment at scale. So just encouraging you all to explore these further. And thank you so much.
That's great. Thanks, Sue. Appreciate that presentation. I definitely think that we'll dive into that last piece a little bit more too, on that grid support and managed charging, and maybe hopefully how that can help close some of that gap that you mentioned a bit on the total cost of ownership between the electric school buses and a standard internal combustion engine bus. So next, I think we're going to go to Kevin from First Student to talk about your perspective on electric school buses. I know that you've been buying a lot of them and you have some experience in this, and would love to hear firsthand what it's like to have these electric school buses as part of your fleet.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, and to the NARUC staff and the NARUC committee. Thank you very much for having us here today. Very important conversation, and we look forward to being a part of it. So the goal of my presentation today, as I've looked back through some of your previous meetings, and you've had briefings on vehicle to grid and V2X, and I think you've probably got a handle on that. But what I wanted to do today is make sure when you leave this meeting today, you never look at school buses the same way again. And that's our goal here. But that being said, I want to start off by saying this is National School Bus Safety Week. It's a very important week for us, and I don't want you to change your opinion and change the outlook on school buses. When you see those red flashing lights and you see that red stop sign extended, please come to a stop and recognize the children there. And I know you might think, well, that's real elementary, Kevin, but I want you to know over 200,000 times a day, a car passes a school bus while those red lights are extended. So if you're at home today and get home this evening and you have student drivers coming on, please educate them about that. If you're in a meeting and you have a safety moment this week, some organizations do that, please think about including national school bus safety criteria in that discussion, because it is critically important, and we hope everybody recognizes that fact. So now that we're out of the way with that, let's move on. So a little bit about First Student. I can summarize this really quickly. The U.S. airline industry today will fly 2.5 million people across the United States. That's every airline, from American to those regional carriers that you fly on. First Student and First Student alone will take 2.7 million children to school this morning, and will take 2.7 million children home this afternoon. We are the largest transporter of people in North America. And as a part of that, we take safety as the critical goal of everything we do. It is our core value because we are given a societal trust to move our nation's children as safely as possible. And we do that every day. But as you can see by the red dots, we operate in about 42 states. We're in 8 provinces of Canada. I'm sure some of you are looking and saying, oh my God, you're in my state. What does that mean for us? We can get into that down the road. But that's running about 46,000 vehicles at 550 locations, meaning we work with 128 utilities across the United States, from IOUs all the way down to co-ops. We are on an electrification journey. We are fully committed to that, and that grew out of our safety mantra. We believe the next phase of safety of students is the air they breathe. So we want to move to a zero emission environment for our students that we transport, but also to the communities where we operate. So this is a journey we launched 4 years ago. We now operate 463 electric school buses across North America. That's the largest operator of school buses. We'll be adding close to 1,500 over the next 14 months as we begin to have more EPA money come in. So as you look at the graph there, the yellow ones are operating, and the various other colors indicate what funding round from EPA or state agencies or even utilities we're receiving funds for to deploy those school buses. A little bit, again, Sue touched upon this pretty highly, but I wanted to make sure, we take a moment back and take a look at this. School buses are in every community in the United States. They don't miss a single one. There are over 13,000 school districts in the United States. And so that puts us close to 500,000 vehicles doing 10 billion trips annually, 26 million students a day. And the fleets average from 30 to 40 school buses. So that's a pretty significant amount of vehicles sitting at any particular location at any given time. But as Sue pointed out, there are less than 6,000 that are electric today. But we do have a significant number committed to bring that number up. But it is the largest single fleet. Only the U.S. Postal Service, in terms of an operating fleet, is larger than the U.S. school bus fleet. So a lot of people just think of this as a local thing, but it's about a $46 billion industry annually of money spent on student transportation across North America. So, one of the issues, though, that comes up when we talk about electric, and Sue touched on it, is the higher price that's driven with this. We have 1,300 school district customers across North America, and we meet with superintendents every single day, and they're very strong people, and they believe in education, and they like the idea of electric school buses for their students, right up until you start talking dollars. And as soon as you talk to them and say, well, we need to raise your transportation spend in order to add electric school buses into your fleet, you get a resounding no. Very, very quickly, because superintendents, and you can understand this, they view every dollar spent outside the classroom as an anathema. Their goal is to get those dollars into the classroom, and everything spent outside is really problematic. And so transportation is one of those things. But as you look, transportation is about 8 to 12% of a school district's budget. So it's a significant spend already, and you're looking to add more to it. So that's why we have been very dependent upon the grants Sue has talked about and the incentives from various entities to make this happen. Because every time we introduce an electric school bus into a fleet that would serve in a school district, we cannot raise the price that we're charging those school districts. They will balk. And I guess I should have touched upon it a little bit early on, just so you understand. In the United States, about 60% of school districts own and operate their own school buses. 40% outsource to companies like First Student. First Student, we're the largest by far. Our next largest competitor is half our size. It goes all the way down to mom and pops that are contractors. And it's geographically, some states have very, very few contractors at all, if any, and some states are heavily dominated. So New York State, about 75% of school districts are contracted. You get to Arkansas, there's one that's contracted. So it really varies geographically where this comes in. But again, each of them approach it the same way. How do we reduce cost? How do we keep those costs down for student transportation? Because that means more dollars that can go to the school district and into the classroom. Fortunately, the programs at EPA have been very strong to help us. Other states have had strong programs, New York, California as a prime example, but Oregon, Illinois, Washington State, New Jersey, Massachusetts, several other states have had programs that have supported electric school buses, that have supported us moving forward, and then some utilities. And we never, ever undervalue the utilities picture here. Matter of fact, the first conversation we have before we ever talk to a school district about bringing electric school buses into a territory is a conversation with the utility about what we can do there. And the utilities make-ready programs around the country, those that have them, are critical to our success, because most of the time the grant does not cover the full cost of the school bus. So not only do we have to buy a more expensive school bus, we have to install infrastructure, which is a very expensive process, which I'm sure you're very aware of. So working with our utility partners to help bring that cost down, understanding up front, what can they do on their side of the meter? What can they do on our side of the meter? And that's a critical conversation we have, because that will let us know, can we bring this project in at a cost? We call it parity, contract parity. Can we bring that cost in at parity so we're not going to increase projects cost the school district? Unfortunately, the grants are going to go away. We actually believe the grants should go away at some point in time. We do not want to become addicted to this outside funding the way the transit industry has. We think the transit industry's had this same program for a number of years. And if you look, the price of a transit bus, electric transit bus 9 years ago was $900,000. It's $900,000 today. And that's because the federal government gives transit agencies $900,000 per bus. We want to get off that dole and get this down into a way of doing business. And so to do that, we really need to identify that new source of revenue. For student, our revenue comes in when the buses roll out in the mornings and we start to pick up children. But can we start to generate revenue while our buses sit on the parking lots? And you need to understand, our buses sit on the parking lot 75 to 82% of the hours of a year. Okay? Weekends, nights, most of the summertime, we're sitting there, and we align really well with your duck curve. As you take a look at how that works out, is because we're rolling out in the morning, we come back in the middle of the day, then we're out again until 5:30 in the afternoon, and then have all night, to charge again. And as Sue mentioned, managed charging becomes a very critical component of that. But the thing I think most folks, when they look at that duck curve, they'll come back and say, well, gee, you're getting back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon. Your bus battery's probably depleted. So how can you support the grid? That's not the case. We generally return to the schoolyard, to our depot in the evening with a 40 to 60% state of charge. We don't want to get down to zero. That's a real, can create issues. So we're coming back with a state of charge. And so we could immediately jump in to participate in any grid activity to support the utility grid. And at the same time, potentially bring in that revenue that will help us bring down the cost to school districts so that we can move this forward. The technical impediments to V2G are pretty much gone. We're in 7 or 8 pilot projects. We're backflowing electrons to the utility grid almost every day. The communication software is getting better and better. We're now looking at more regulatory issues that are, need to be worked out, working with the utilities so they understand how it can be done. And you got to keep in mind that when we're looking at doing a deployment, bidirectional infrastructure costs 30 to 40% more to install than unidirectional infrastructure. So when I look at a project, if I don't immediately see a path to some type of revenue by going bidirectional, I don't install it. That's an additional cost that I'm having to figure out what to do with. And if the utility's not going to pay for that bidirectional infrastructure, we don't do it. So right now we're deploying a significant number of school buses without bidirectional infrastructure. I don't like doing it, but that there's no path forward, no sound path that I can document really is driving that kind of thought process. So just so you know, and this is where I want you to now potentially look at things differently. So as we said, the average school bus fleet's about 30 to 40 buses. So we did a little math here that you got 100 electric school buses sitting on a parking lot. And we're talking about putting in 100 chargers at 30 kilowatt. That's what we use. We're on the low end of the DC fast charge area. We don't need to be 300, 400 megawatt chargers the way Class 8 truck needs to be, because we have all night long to charge. And as you may recall, I said we want to come back to the yard with a 40 to 60% state of charge. That's coming back in the morning too, with 40 to 60% state of charge. That's why that 30% during that 2-hour window we're back home during the middle of the day can get us back up to where we need to be. So we are trying to manage that. But that winds up being about 3 megawatts of stationary or storage sitting on a parking lot. So when you look at that, we will be able to push about 1.8 megawatts back to the grid. And there are a lot of proximity we can look at during the afternoon to make this work. Anywhere from 900,000 megawatts to 900,000 kilowatts to 1 megawatt per 100 school buses. Remember, 490,000 school buses in the US. So you could actually go in and really begin to look at things much differently when you looked at school buses. We actually had a very long working relationship with one of the ISO's RTOs that has an existing energy market. They came in and studied our operational pattern at a very specific parking lot that we use, and what we would do if we electrified those and how they would operate. That came down to math being that we can make about $18,000 per bus per year. That would mean I would not need a grant. That would mean we would need nothing else extra to make that work for deploying an electric school bus in that area. Even if we and looked at ISO RTO, they kind of gave us perfect information. They said, well, you know exactly when to buy and exactly when to sell at the right minute of the day. You're never going to know that. We knocked that down to around $10,000 to $12,000 per bus, and that still had a significant impact on what we can do there. So, as you go around your community, look at that school bus lot, look at those and say, how many potential megawatts are sitting there in your community? Real quick, I do want to talk about one of the projects we're doing. This is a PUC, New York PUC approved project that we're doing in New York City with Con Ed, with Bechtel being our construction cost, a $9 million program from Con Ed. The issue here was Con Ed was going to have problems getting us enough power to charge the buses we're deploying there. We didn't want to pay all the cost of bringing that power to us. They were maximizing out the circuit in that neighborhood already. And already we're running into problems. And it's a part of the town where there are a number of fleets that park in that part of town. And they knew they were going to have to bring in more power. So they began to look at how could we do this differently? Rather than building up the grid on their side of the meter, what can we do on the customer side of the meter? So we're putting solar on top of the buses, generating about 4 kW per bus. We're putting in 500 kilowatt storage solar on our rooftop, putting in a 2 megawatt stationary battery pack. We'll be using all that energy will be enough to charge our buses during off-peak hours so that we're not demanding on the grid from Con Ed. But if Con Ed runs into problems on that circuit, they have full rights to come onto our side of the meter and withdraw power from either the solar array, the stationary storage battery, or our bus batteries themselves to run that substation. So we view this as kind of a win-win for both entities, that we're getting the power we need to store this. Con Ed is getting what it needs to generally deal with a bad circuit they have in their territory. This is a good graphic of it. I'll take this. You guys can look at this later. Very good project. I know Con Ed would be open to others coming up and taking a look at this and seeing what's going on, because they do view this as a potential real future and cost-effective future. We're under construction right now, and we'll be up and running probably by the January timeframe. So, as I said, pilot programs are great, but the kids on this bus need you guys. They need us all now working together to how we can get V2G to be a reality, so that school bus operators like us, or even school districts that operate them, can begin to see that revenue, buy down the cost of these, get them expanded. That's what's going to make this happen. All the grants from EPA are not going to make this happen. What's going to make this happen is finding a way to tap into the energy that we're going to have stored across North America. And again, it's a journey together. I want you to know that First Student is a partner with the Public Utility Commissions. As you need us, if we need to come speak at your sessions or whatever, file comments, we're there to do that. We're there to work with the utilities. We will volunteer our buses for pilot programs, which we're already doing, but we're really hoping to move beyond the pilot area. So that was kind of a lot to cover, but look forward to any questions you have afterwards.
No, that was fantastic, Kevin. Thanks so much for going through that. I learned a lot in that too. Well, first of all, just very struck by how the timing of bus usage really seems to fit the benefits of the grid really well. And I'm excited to hear more about that. I think Amy's probably going to talk about that a little bit too. And then I didn't realize that the Brooklyn project was also about flexible interconnection too. So you actually use the benefits of the school buses to then to get interconnected faster, which is something that
exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Okay, Amy, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great to have Sue and Kevin here and sort of singing the same tune, as they say. Let me pull up my slides. Hopefully this will work. All right. Can everyone see that? Okay, great.
Looks good.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Amy. I work with Highland Electric Fleets. I'm the Senior Director of Market Development here. Been here almost 4 years, so it's been exciting to grow with the company. Highland was founded in 2019, so we are the upstart to First Student's long-standing school bus operations, and we've exclusively focused on fleet electrification in a service provider capacity. I'll explain a little bit more about what that means. But we're now active in 30 states and have over 1,000 electric school buses under contract. So are working fast and furiously to meet the strong interest in electrification. We have, with those buses, over 6 million electric miles driven. And here you can see a broad set of our partners where we've deployed. We run just about 673 buses, I think now. And then, as I mentioned, the rest are sort of in various stages of development. But the map is similar to Kevin, I think, saying that there's, and Sue, that there's electric buses in many, many states all over the country. And the federal funding has certainly supported that, but also state and utility funding has really driven the great interest and sort of, I think, what people see as value in as well as all the other benefits that come with electrification. So that's been really wonderful to see. a little bit about how Highland does this. I mentioned we're a fleet electrification service provider. We offer what we call a performance-based contract. So we guarantee that a given vehicle will be route ready every single day. So that means it's gonna take students to and from school with the right amount of energy available to do that on any given vehicle. We have 10 to 15-year contracts with our school district partners or their fleet operating providers. So similar to competitors that Kevin mentioned. So we'll work direct with either districts directly or their contractors to set up the contract. It's an annual fee-based contract that includes everything from the upfront investment in the project equipment, installation, interconnection, and then all the fueling. So electricity is included in that contract price, as well as operations and maintenance for the life of the contract. So it's a set fee that's, can be budgeted to, and that can be really appealing to our customer base as well. We do have ongoing support, which is critical for many aspects of this type of project, but especially as we'll get into when it comes to charge management and extra, especially to vehicle to grid, just making sure if we're going to be doing multiple activities with these vehicles, that we all know what needs to happen when, and that's part of our expertise and built into our software package and just how we run our business. So I know that Sue and Kevin have touched on this, but I just want to emphasize that there's a really good reason to start with electric school buses when you think about the ability of vehicles to provide energy back to the grid. And we are actually created as a bunch of energy nerds going after what we saw as a way to support both the transportation and energy markets. So school buses for us were selected really intentionally. They're large batteries on wheels that do a lot of good when you're electrifying them, decarbonizing them, but they also have really specific routes, and they sit, as Kevin said, in a specific place every day for quite a long period of time. We also have a number of vehicles available in the United States and really only in the United States, because school buses are pretty unique to this market. But for all those reasons, they're a good opportunity to think about vehicle to grid. Kevin laid this out in his slides, sort of how many buses can do what, and math aside, the vehicles themselves each have around a 200 kilowatt hour battery. So depending on the state of charge, you can provide a large number of megawatts back to the system, megawatt hours back to the system. And that's what we've been able to do in a number of different places. So we currently are active in 2 revenue generating programs and are now, and I'll get into this, and we'll be participating in more going into next summer season, which is typically the peak period and when these programs are operating. So both Connected Solutions and this project is in Massachusetts, but also the Flexible Load Management Program in Vermont are approved through their regulators and operated by IOUs to offer compensation for grid peak demand reduction services. So we've been operating with Connected Solutions for 5 years with 3 vehicles and for 3 years with 4 vehicles in respectively. And these just kind of lay out some of the stats on that participation and that resulting energy and then revenue. So you can see these early projects both used Borg-Warner chargers and Thomas Julie buses. We've now tested and are doing more work with other equipment providers as well. And that's given us a ton of experience. In fact, today there's a EVSWG forum happening in Detroit this week, and we just did a test run with a ride vehicle and both a Heliox and a Heliox charger and a Telus charger with DTE, and it went great. So that was that was good news because we're doing a live demo tomorrow. So for anyone that's going to be at the DTE EVSWG forum, you can go see some EVSWG live tomorrow. And it works. So, whew. This is a few more of the pilot programs that we're involved with. As Kevin mentioned, sort of there's a spectrum of what's happening at the moment. There's the revenue programs that I outlined, as well as a number of different utilities and just jurisdictions that are wanting to test this out and see what works. So this outlines some significant work that we're doing in Colorado with Excel. A few years, I guess a year or so ago now, with one vehicle, and now we have 12 more vehicles under contract to continue to test in their territory. And then we're also working with Pepco in Maryland. But you know, just as I gave the example of DTE, we're heading to Michigan as well, and hoping to do more work. I thought, yeah, and Kevin teed this up really nicely, sort of the case for how there's a need for some continued support. And so what I wanted to do was really sort of outline how we think of program structures and policies that are would be beneficial. And obviously these need to be a little bit different in each jurisdiction because there are different circumstances, different rules and regulations, but also different value stacks and grid valuation and grid challenges. So I think overall what I try to lay out here are some different approaches to energy dispatch program, wholesale market participation, and then also utility CapEx program. So getting some support for that incremental cost that Kevin was describing, that is still a gap. And I'd argue that there's a way to combine these in any number of ways in different configurations, but would put them to you all as something to consider and think about how they might work best. I might start at the bottom, and I'll leave these slides with you as well, and maybe we'll come back to them in the discussion. But start at the bottom with CapEx. It's pretty straightforward. I think there is an incremental cost differential for this equipment, and there's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario where if there was a pathway, as Kevin was laying out, there's a pathway that it makes sense that we could recoup that additional cost, then there's a good argument to make the investment up front. But if it might happen if you install this equipment, then you know who's going to move first. So I'd suggest that it would be best if we can meet in the middle. So if we can have some support for that incremental cost and a pathway to compensation, then we can all move much further, much faster. I will admit that having upfront cost style programs is expensive, and they should be thoughtfully created, and because otherwise it's really hard to scale and really hard to get enough projects to started so that then you kind of, you know, get the motor running and things start churning on their own. It's a funny analogy for an electric school bus, but here you are. So moving to what maybe is perhaps where the conversation could center, but an energy dispatch program similar to what we do today with Connected Solutions with National Grid and the FLMP program with Green Mountain Power. Those are intended to compensate for performance. I mean, both of those for any sort of a somewhat of a bring your own device situation, but compensate for the benefits that a provider can offer in addressing costs that come during peak periods. So they're designed to really help meet force a reduction through interested parties finding enough value in pushing back power and then being compensated for it. Those are excellent programs. We're excited to be part of them, and they're really sort of been quite at the forefront of activity in this space. There are some challenges there where it can be hard to get up and running through interconnection, and both of those actually have short contract periods. So today they're 5-year terms of confirmed revenue. So for a contract that's 10 years or plus, we can't underwrite to the full life of our contract, but rather have to derate the out years. So it's a little challenging to use it as a real to its full value or potential value if it, for example, the contract terms matched, and we could really look at confirmed revenue throughout the life of a school bus contract, for example. I know we're wanting to get the discussion, so I'll just go light on wholesale markets. That's a big one, but I did want to point it out that for us, at least, we see operations at the distribution and the transmission level to be somewhere we can contribute to benefits to the system overall. And conscious of time, as I said, but I did want to highlight these are programs that do offer compensation to vehicles providing the services that I've described today. So in California, Vermont, New York, the Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut area, and then a number of different municipal light plants and rural co-ops have worked with us and others on more direct contracts to provide grid value. So it's not the longest list in the world, but it has a number of jurisdictions here, and that's really exciting. You can see that there's quite a range in the amount of the revenue. So that's something also that we can dig into. This is a big one, and I'll maybe leave it with the group, but I wanted to share where we're looking at future opportunities and had robust conversations or and what we're seeing as over the next few years. As you can see on the right-hand side, these are not expected to happen overnight in any stretch of the imagination, but that's sort of what we imagine as the process, and would like to move faster, of course, and with your all's interest and engagement, I think that's how we can do that. But I think it is really exciting to look at what is going on in the market and sort of see how we can move forward in various states. You can see in Maryland and Texas, both the wholesale and retail markets are, and their operators or managers, regulators are really interested in how this could happen in very different ways. And then some growing interest in a number of different states with their utilities in different ways in the central part of the country, whereas the ones I listed are all on the edges, so the coast. So that's I think also demonstrate this isn't, there's a broad set of benefits, and just as we saw that there's electric school buses all over the country. So last slide here, I think really it's this last bullet that I want to leave you with is that there's really an opportunity to address challenges that we're all facing all over the country, and that electric vehicles, generally speaking, can really be a huge asset to the grid. And the further we go today on creating the right systems and processes and program models, the better prepared we will be as we continue to face all sorts of challenges on the grid. So I will leave you with that and excited to continue the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Really appreciate that. I'm definitely want to hear more about like the right way maybe for or like the best way that you see for those pilot programs to be going, like what is the most useful method for you. But we can open it up to the Q&A. So we still have all three of our speakers here.